25 years of people-centered, impactful journalism. Hello, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle on digital address GA0992539. Our top stories this hour. Contact tracing personnel withdrawal following lack of personal protective equipment. What does this mean for the fight against COVID-19? We'll also take a look at that as police personnel continue to raise flags over the food given them, which they say is a tiny fraction of the 100 cedi Russian allowance due them. We'll be getting some answers from the police service. Now, Parliament is back after Speaker suspended sitting indefinitely. Today, the Finance Minister was there to request 1.25 billion Ghana cedis from contingency fund to support coronavirus fight. We're live in Parliament for the responses to this request and more. And on to the global picture as normalcy begins to return to Wuhan, the origin of coronavirus. We are in the USA as well, which is now topping the chart. And we'll take a look at Europe for what interventions are being put in place there to stop the spread and the death being caused by coronavirus. Those are top stories this hour. My name is Gifty Andopia. Join us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144, and on YouTube where we're streaming live. You can join us with your thoughts, your opinions, your questions on 0540109009. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. Of the number of deaths and the number of cases we've recorded here in Ghana. Total confirmed cases is there on your screen, 287, same as of yesterday at the same time. And of course, as the numbers have not changed, let's take a look whether or not anything has happened or changed in the regions. 256 for Accra. It remains the same. The Ashanti region has 18. It also remains the same. Northern region has 10. Upper West has 1. The Eastern region has 1. And the Upper East region has 1. So far, these are what the statistics are. We're yet to get any details on the half, for the remaining half of the 15,000 tests that were done earlier. What happened in the routine surveillance? The numbers have not changed there either. 172 confirmed cases so far, 3 recovered, discharged 18, and those responding to treatment, the figures remain the same. 144 moderate condition, 2 of them, which means they're closer, if you like, to critical condition, and 5 people have died. We'll take a look at those who are in mandatory quarantine, which program has started to start taking them back home. Those who have finished the 14-day quarantine. Confirmed cases out of that, 105. None of them have recovered, but some people have been discharged to go and continue treatment at home. 31 of them responding to treatment. 74 out of that number. None of them are in critical condition, and nobody has died. So by way of education for you, so you have an update on what the situation is, those are the figures for you. This afternoon, we're speaking to Simon Nate, who's been discharged from hospital today after 21 days in government mandatory isolation, receiving treatment for COVID-19. He tested positive on the 18th of February and was immediately brought to the isolation center at the Ridge Hospital, where he spent about 3 weeks receiving that treatment. He shares his experiences and gives us more insight about the treatment, as well as what he calls stigma inflicted on his family since he tested positive. He speaks to the head of our health desk, Fred Smith, via Zoom shortly before he was discharged for home management. Please note, Simon has given his permission for us to use his real name and also show his face in this video as part of his own campaign to deal with stigmatization of COVID-19 patients in Ghana.
As I stated, I travel outside the country to Paris for an official business. In the course of it, I didn't experience much symptoms. I came to Ghana and I realized that I have to go and do the test in the interest of my family, in the interest of my community. So I came to the Ridge Hospital and I conducted the test.
A test for what?
For COVID-19.
Okay.
For COVID-19. Honestly, when I came initially, people were afraid to get closer to us. I quite remember at a certain point, I had to use my employer's office to get the president and other persons who were in charge of the whole, COVID-19 project to know that it's like nothing is happening at Ridge. And luckily enough, most of the government officials and then the medical team responded. I got my screening and I went home. Subsequently, I had a call from the medical team that I have been tested positive. And luckily enough, there was an arrangement to get an ambulance to come for me. And I did this thing on 3 solid grounds. 1, to protect my family. 2, to protect the community. I come from a very poor community, Malaysian, and I believe the worst thing I can do to the community is to infect anyone with the virus. And the last thing is, I realize that it is my interest to let people know that I have the virus.
Well, how has it been for you in isolation?
Basically, coming to isolation center, as I've stated, is not an easy thing. Being in this room, this small room for almost 21 days is something that is very, difficult to do. But I can see we have good nurses over here. The doctors have been very professional. The nurses have been extra professional. And as I said, they have really treated us well. And I don't think any of my colleagues who have been here might complain of their attitude. You can see that these are the real nurses that we need to take care of.
Did they have the necessary protection for this job that they were doing?
Of course. When you come, I can't talk about other places, but when you come to Ridge Hospital, most of the nurses have the PPE. Anytime they are coming to our room, they knock and then you see them well dressed in their PPE. And they try to avoid much contact with us at all material time.
Let's talk about your time under treatment. How many times were you tested for the virus?
I've been tested so far 2 times and I tested positive. I've done my third test. Today I'm going to do my last test before departing home. The first 2 was positive. I'm yet to know the third one and then the 4th one that will be conducted.
But even before the 3rd one, you are even told that you'll be discharged in the next few minutes.
Yes, government announced this policy of home management.
Mm-hmm.
And you spend almost 21 days at the isolation center normally, and you are in good health and you are not complaining of anything, they then discharge you to go home. And not that you are just going home just to go and just write about. No, you go into self-quarantine. And then after now, I have the medical officer that has been assigned to me, who is going to take care of me in the house. And we have already spoken. We have agreed on all the protocols and everything.
How has it been for you since you tested for positive for COVID?
Honestly, before God, it has been 2-way effect. Initially when you get the news, it's like a shock to you, and then you become worried. But I'm the face of the family and I'm the face of the house, so I have to show some kind of strong character in this time. In my case, I can tell you, my wife has given birth before I left the country, and my daughter was having some few medical issues, so she was at Yahoo Hospital. Now, breaking the news to my wife, who is already traumatized at Yahoo Hospital, was a big thing for me. I can't remember. I have to call Yahoo, even though she was discharged, to come home to stop her from coming home. And I have my daddy who is also not feeling well, and breaking the news to him was also a problem. And some of the family they said, but you know what, I look at your level of processing information and then I tell you that, look, this is it. To be honest, it has not been easy when it comes to discrimination and stigmatization. But I don't blame Ghanaians. It's as a result of lack of information and misinformation that has been put there by certain people. People believe that when you get a virus, the next day you are going to die. And, when such things happen, people try to add their own information to it. I can't remember, some of the information was that I was bleeding when they even came for me and a whole lot of things. So with
what bleeding?
The son was bleeding from the nose.
And you said this wasn't the case?
That wasn't the case. I was not bleeding from the nose.
So what symptoms did you show?
Okay, I was having my headache. I was coughing. I had a problem with my throat. As I remember, I had a pop eye, and I was having some kind of diarrhea. Those were the symptoms that I was showing.
You were not sneezing?
No, I was not sneezing.
Did you have high temperature?
Yes, I do. The day I was brought into the center, my temperature was 38. Okay, my temperature. But even before then, I was having this paracetamol that I bought from France. You can say that is 1,000 milligrams. I used to take it before I even got to the center to suppress the kind of, how do you call it?
The temperature.
My temperature goes up. So I used to take that.
What medication have you been on since you've been arranged?
I think I have been on chloroquine. I've been on this drug. Let me check it for you. Azithromycin.
Azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine.
Exactly. And then I think I had a problem with my BP. My BP also went very high.
Okay.
So I was taking a drug to suppress my BP. And so it got to a point I was not able to breathe well. So I was given other medicines to control my breathing pattern. So
were you ever taken into intensive care? Were you ever taken into intensive care?
Not at all. No.
Now, I'm asking if you were ever taken into intensive care. No. How long have you been at the Rich Hospital for the management of this virus?
For 21 days.
For 21 days.
I came in, that is on the 18th of March, and I think today is my 21 days.
All right, so how do you feel going home today?
It's a sign of relief to me, my family, traveling for several days out of the country. You don't see your family. You just came in and you met this unfortunate situation and being away from my family. I feel so excited to go back to my family to night in a small way with my family until the whole process is over. And I feel like me coming out will let people know that there's hope despite the challenges associated with the virus.
Do you have any message for Ghanaians?
Yes, I want to tell Ghanaians that at this critical moment, we have only one hope, and our hope is God. Beyond that, I know our medical team are doing their best to save all of us. But we must adhere to the various directives that have been given by the health professionals. So stay home, I don't think it is so expensive to stay in your room for 14 days. Look, I've been here for 21 days. After this, I'm going for another self-quarantine. That is 14 days. Can you imagine? I was fortunate my situation was mild. But I can tell you, I have a colleague that I attended the training with who has passed on. So people should not take the thing for a joke and thinking that, oh, this is a virus that will not attack you. I'm telling you, the youth are dying because I have my own colleague who sat beside me and he has passed on in DRC Congo.
This someone you traveled to France with?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you arrived in Ghana on the same day?
No, he's living in DRC Congo.
Okay. All right, so you went on the same course with this person who is a Congolese but has passed on.
Yeah.
He also tested positive.
Yes, of course. So that should tell the young guys out there that the thing is not a joke. You see people walking on the street and then you ask yourself, are they not taking this thing serious? Already our health system is not a strong type. So if we should get huge cases, what it means is that a time will come, they will assess your situation and they will determine whether you will get medical care. And that could be dangerous for the country. On the issue of stigma and then discrimination, I want to make it known to the entire country that it is not a crime for anyone to have the virus. The virus is not like something that you can physically see. If we don't see it, someone like me, I would have avoided it. But the point is, you don't know when you will get it. So if someone had it, the best we can do is to show compassion to the person. The best we can do is to show love to the person. And the best we can do is to support the person to get the cure. If, for instance, I was not showing much symptoms, I could have moved through my community and I would have infected a lot of people. And you know, the local transmission is the most dangerous of all because you don't know whether you have it unless you are tested. So we are appealing to them, stay home, wash your hands, relax with your family, and let's wait for the 14 days. So that if God willing, the numbers are very low, then it means government can contain the situation. Going out there will not save you.
And finally, I would like to understand, were you in contact with anybody who may have been exposed since you returned from Ghana?
Yes, no, I didn't have any contact with someone who has been exposed.
How did you get home from the airport, for instance?
I was picked by someone. Are you talking about my contacts, people that I had contact with?
Yes.
Yes, I had a number of people, so I gave their list to the Ghana Health Service and my employer, and they have conducted 2 series of tests, and none of them tested negative. I think yesterday was the day that the last test was conducted.
So all of them came out negative?
Exactly.
All right. Many thanks to you, Dave, for speaking to us.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. And I pray that we all get over it.
That's Simon Nate. He has just tested negative after he tested positive and been on treatment for some time now, speaking to head of our health desk, Fred Smith. Well, just as we took that story, there was an update to the numbers of coronavirus cases here in Ghana that has just come in. And if you check on the screen, you see those numbers there. Now we are up to 313 cases of coronavirus, 313 cases, as you can see on your screen there, and 1 more person has died. So there are 6 deaths at the moment. It used to be 5, and this was just a few minutes ago. It used to be 5. Now we've gone up to 6 deaths, and the number of COVID-19 cases so far in Ghana, 313. I'll keep reminding you as we go along in this program. But some relatives of people currently receiving treatment for COVID-19 have told JoyNews about the ostracization, if you like, that they feel following and that they're having to endure in recent weeks following the records of COVID-19, which is close to them. According to them, the derision from especially people they regard as friends and even family has become unbearable unbearable. JoyNews' Justice Beidou in this report tells the story of how coronavirus has transformed friends into foes.
They started telling the people who ride the motorbikes to go and spread the news.
This child has asked me to hide his identity. He says he's been through hell, and even though he looks scared, he wants the world to know his story. Hopefully, that changes something.
You don't know that you have gotten some, so you will not be talking about people soon.
I'll call him Oko. Oko's father is one of the people who are currently receiving treatment for coronavirus. Since his father was taken to hospital, he himself and others in his home have tested negative. But that has not spared him scorn from people who used to be friendly neighbors.
Now, no one comes to our shop to come and buy anything. As a result of that, my father asked my grandmother to close the shop. If people see that one of the people in this house has gone out, they'll even run away, or sometimes they'll be watching you. Or sometimes they'll be mocking you.
These two sisters have also invited me into their home to tell me their story. They too have a brother receiving treatment for COVID-19. The attacks they faced has forced them to shut their food vending business. They've asked the 4 workers they work with to go home. And they've also stopped going to the market because since the rumor went out, everyone who meets them runs away.
The way they are treating us, it's as if we are the ones with the disease. You need to be tough to go through this. The whole town has been told not to come close to us. They do not even buy from us again.
I've lost most of my friends because of this problem. And I don't know what is coming ahead. Whether if school reopen, I'll work or not, I don't know.
From far away, somewhere in Europe, this woman too reached out with a familiar story.
Someone has been around the community and then the neighboring community to tell them that we've all contracted the virus. So
her family back in Ghana has been through the same trauma, and even outside the borders of Ghana, she feels the heat too. Over Skype, she had a message.
I would plead with our government. They should also focus informing the general public about stigma, because the disease or the virus might not kill the person, but the stigma might.
This week will be a critical one in Ghana's fight against coronavirus, according to the government. But it seems there's a disease that is even more critical that the country is yet to pay attention to: stigma. Justice Beidou, JoyNews, Accra.
And so Justice filed that report. If you have someone who lives by you who has had anything to do with someone who has COVID-19, this is not the time to stigmatize, because what you do is to push people into hiding, and that will only aid in the spread of the virus. Now, some of you can keep sending your WhatsApp messages in. What do you think? What are your thoughts about these stories that we're telling today, and also about the numbers and the changes in the number that we've recorded so far? This one says, bravo, good work done as part of the fight against the spread of the COVID-19 virus. I suggest temperature guns to be used at various lorry and car stations so that they can get used to screen. They can be used to screen passengers before boarding the car. Thank you for sending in that message as well. And I'm going to take you now to Parliament. Now, Speaker of Parliament has suspended sitting indefinitely after Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta laid a paper before Parliament requesting for 1.25 billion Ghana cedis from contingency fund to support coronavirus fight. The Speaker referred the paper to the Finance Committee before the indefinite suspension. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins us live from Parliament. Hello, Joseph. Joseph, let's start with what's in this request. let's start with what's in the request being made by the finance minister. What really is it, and what does he say he needs that 1.25 billion cedis to do?
So this is money that was in what is called the stabilization fund. Refers to a portion of the oil resources that is usually saved to help cushion the economy in times of difficulty. Now, on Friday night, Parliament approved a request from the finance minister to move an amount of $200 million from the stabilization fund into what is called a contingency fund. And it's from that contingency fund that the finance minister will be able to spend any such money that previously used to be part of the stabilization fund, which has to do with the oil resources. Now, what's supposed to happen is anytime money moves from the stabilization fund into the contingency fund, before the finance minister can spend that particular amount, he has to come back to Parliament, particularly Parliament Committee on Finance, and present the specific details on what he intends to spend that money on for the necessary approval before he can go ahead and spend. So today, the finance minister laid before Parliament what is described as the coronavirus alleviation program. The details of it is just about 6 pages, spelling out specifically what he intends to use that amount for. They are a little over $200 million, which translates into about 1.25 billion Ghana cedis. Now, these are the details Kenoforiata presented to Parliament, which, as we speak, the Committee on Finance is deliberating on, and that committee, chaired by Dr. Makasibe Yeboah, is sitting as we speak right here in Parliament, and it has the finance minister present before the committee defending the details of that particular planned expenditure. Let me run you through those details very quickly. Out of the 1.2 billion Ghana cedis which the finance minister would want to spend, an amount of 280 million Ghana cedis will go to support the provision of food packages and hot meals. Food packages and hot meals. That's 280 million Ghana cedis. Another 40 million Ghana cedis is going to the Ghana National Buffer Stock Company. You know, this is an agency under the Ministry of Food and Agriculture that stores various food products they buy, and when there are difficult times, then they release it into the system so that then food prices don't skyrocket. They are getting 40 million Ghana cedis. Another amount of 200 million Ghana cedis is going into the provision of water and sanitation. You know that the president said that for a period of 3 months, Ghanaians will not be paying water bill. That amount will be going to support that, and also all the activities that are happening in the market in order to help ensure adequate sanitation. That amount of 200 million is going into that. Apart from that, an amount of 241 million Ghana cedis is going into the waiver of personal income tax for all health workers for a period of 3 months. You recall the president announced that in his address to the nation over the weekend. An amount of 241 million Ghana cedis will be spent on that. Another amount of 80 million Ghana cedis will be spent on allowances for healthcare personnel as well as frontline staff. You recall the president gave details of that as well in his address. So there will be the 50% basic allowance for frontline health persons, and also a tax waiver for all healthcare professionals. The 80 million cedis is what would go into that. And then the final 2 items on the agenda, an amount of 2 million Ghana cedis will be going into the provision of bathing services in the Tema, Kumasi, Kaswa areas for the duration of the lockdown, as well as to the Ayalolo company, and that money will be used for the bathing of various healthcare personnel. And then the biggest item on this particular agenda is an amount of 600 million Ghana cedis, which will be in the form of soft loans for micro, small, and medium-scale businesses. That is the request that the finance minister is was actually put in before the Finance Committee. And to give details of that, in order to assess that particular amount with the 600 million Ghana cedis, the indication is that government is collaborating with the National Board for Small-Scale Industries, as well as the Business and Trade Association, to select those who would benefit from this particular 600 million that's going to businesses. And we are gathering from the details presented to Parliament earlier today that this will come in the form of soft loans, and it will be repaid over a period of time. There will be like a one-year moratorium within which no payment will be done, and then after that, the individuals who will benefit from that particular amount will then have to begin repaying. So those are the details. The Finance Committee is still deliberating with the Finance Minister as he defends this request, and if the Finance Committee gives the necessary approval, they will subsequently report to Parliament on that in order for the Finance Minister to make the expenditure on this 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. Gifting.
Very detailed as usual with all the relevant information. Joseph, I just want to find out, we know that the minorities seem to have had issues with the absence of the Finance Minister earlier, because they had expected him earlier in Parliament when he didn't show, and also when they expected the Speaker to adjourn instead of suspend sitting. Today, what was the minority in Parliament, and what was their response to this request by the Finance Minister?
The minority MPs showed up on the floor of Parliament, and even in the ongoing meeting of the Finance Committee with the Finance Minister, the minority MPs are present for that particular conversation. Haruna Idrisu was very emphatic that for them on the minority side, this recall of the House that's taking place, as long as it's dealing with anything having to do with COVID-19, and as far as the Speaker is acting in accordance with the standing orders of Parliament and the Constitution of the Republic, he would have the support of the minority, and looks like that is what has happened. But there were questions about the Speaker's decision to again suspend sitting indefinitely, even after the Finance Minister delivered a quick statement to the House, and the indication was that they were rather expected to continue sitting even as he suspends briefly, for the Finance Minister to request this particular approval and come back and get the Finance Committee to report back to the House. But Osaiche Mensah-Bonsu, who is the majority leader, has been clarifying that in terms of release of funds from the contingency fund to the Finance Minister, the constitutional requirement is that he goes ahead to consult with the Finance Committee. So the general plenary doesn't have to give any approval, and if the Finance Minister would want to do that, it will just be about him informing the House and not for approval from the House, because the Finance Committee can give that relevant approval, which they are expecting that by the end of this ongoing meeting they will go ahead and give. So sitting has been suspended indefinitely once more, and chances are that the House may not be sitting to consider the issues of this particular request with regards to the coronavirus alleviation program anytime soon.
Anytime soon. Does that mean that we'll have to wait again for when next Parliament or the Speaker calls the members of Parliament back into Parliament?
Yes, so it looks like that's what's going to happen in terms of everyone holding on until the Speaker decides to recall the House. One other thing that happened today was that the President formally communicated to Parliament the appointment of Bernard Okoboy as Deputy Minister for Health, and that letter was read to MPs, and the appointment referred to Parliament's Appointment Committee. We again are awaiting indication on how quickly the Appointment Committee will go ahead to deliberate and vet Dr. Bernard Okoboy and go ahead to give the necessary approval. That is an approval that finally has to come back to the plenary for the necessary approval. But in the letter to Parliament, one of the things the President requested for was an expedited approval, because then the President indicated in the letter that the appointment of Dr. Bernard Okoboy is an addition to the public health team who are helping the nation deal with coronavirus in these times of emergency.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for that update. But just a quick one before you go. Did the members of Parliament have a way today of observing social distancing?
Yeah.
But it looks like Joseph could not hear that final question. but certainly, hopefully, they did observe social distancing. Some of you have been sending in your messages now. Well, if you just joined in, Joseph has been giving us an update from Parliament when the Finance Minister showed up today demanding or requesting 1.25 billion cedis. And Joseph tells us that that money he wants to use for food, for the vulnerable, mass disinfection of our markets and other places, water and sanitation, as we're getting water for free for the next 3 months, busing of health personnel, allowances for frontline workers, tax waivers as well. He gave us that breakdown, and also soft loans for businesses. That is what the Finance Minister wants that money to do. Whether or not it will be approved, there is a meeting ongoing at the moment, and Joseph will be there to bring us the update as and when we have it. But we told you about our stories earlier about what people who have gone through COVID-19 are calling stigmatization on them and their families. Some of you have been sending in your messages. This one says, hello, good afternoon. Says, I am from Ejuraha. Can I access okay, so you want to find out how you can access the learning that's ongoing on TV. It's on your Joy channel. If you have the digital box, you should be able to access it. This one says, good afternoon. I think there are more numbers that our leaders are still hiding, as the minority suggested earlier. This is from Kobe in Kumasi. Kobe, thanks for sending in that message as well. This one says, I think Ghanaians still need more education about the COVID-19. Why will they stigmatize someone instead of showing them love? God have mercy. You don't add your name to it, but thank you for sending in the message. This one says, hi, it's unfortunate that there's a lot of illiteracy in Ghana. For those that have recovered, I believe they are immune now and cannot infect others. He says, I'm hoping to be corrected. So Ghanaians should stop the stigmatization and follow the protection and prevention instructions. That is to stay at home, wash your hands, observe social distancing. This one is asking, will all the announcement of social distancing, you don't say anything, but you say, oh, Asin Aroso of Asin for Sutre for Praso Road, taxi drivers still load 2 in front and 4 at the back. That is very worrying. This is a sin also, so we're calling on the authorities in this area to check this, and also for the police or the military men who are on the road checking the lockdown to at least take a look at this one. I know that a sin may not be a part of it. I don't know if it's part of the Ashanti region, but for taxi drivers to be picking 2 people in front and 4 at the back, certainly a worrying development that ought to be taken into consideration. And I'll just read my final 2 messages. You just told us that 2 people that were in critical condition have migrated to moderate condition. How come that we have recorded death again amidst their moderate condition? Well, we don't know. This is coming from Sami and Koma Asinfo. So we don't know whether those people who were in moderate condition are those any of them has died. We don't know for a fact. We don't have those details as of yet. I take a very final message, and then please stop calling this line. I think Ashaman Jericho is not part of the lockdown because they are not adhering to social distance. This is coming from Abeku. All right, thank you very much for your messages. Keep them coming. I'm going to take a very quick break, but when I return, we'll talk about the global picture. Normalcy seems to be returning to Wuhan, the origin of the coronavirus outbreak. We'll also take a look at what's happening in the United States of America, which is recording many more deaths and topping the chart. We'll also make a stop in Europe for updates there, even as the European states look at how they can come together to deal with this problem. Join us with your opinions once again on 0540-109-009. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the EU has failed to agree on a coronavirus recovery deal that will help member states to revive the economies. Thomas Sparrow is a correspondent with our partners DW. He joins us with details and a better understanding of the situation. He's joining us all the way from Germany. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Gifty. Nice to be with you and all your viewers again. It is really a pleasure to share all the different news coming out from Europe. And as you say, in particular today, the big news is this impossibility of EU leaders to find common ground when it comes to protecting the different EU countries from the potential impact, financial impact and economic impact of the coronavirus crisis.
So let's take a look at really what sort of engagements have gone on. In view of coronavirus, I don't think they've been able to meet together as a group. So what has been the mode of communication, and how is it that it's just not working?
The big sort of word now, the big term now is European solidarity. And there are instances where you see European solidarity, for example, at a bilateral level. German hospitals taking in French or Italian patients. That's one clear example. Or when some of the tourists that have been brought back from different parts of the world, then one country may take tourists from another country. Those are sort of clear bilateral instances where there's European solidarity. But European leaders have had trouble trying to have a common strategy when it comes to the medium and the long term, as I said, to try and reduce the potential impact of the coronavirus in terms of the economy of those countries. They haven't obviously been able to meet in person, so they've been carrying out different meetings virtually, each minister or each leader from his or her respective country. In fact, there was a meeting only yesterday which apparently lasted 16 hours between the different finance ministers, and they weren't able to come to an agreement because different countries view different measures when it comes to the future of the EU in regards to the corona crisis. And if I can just explain them briefly, I will. There's something called the European Stability Mechanism, ESM, something that's favored by Germany, for example, by the Netherlands. That's the Eurozone bailout fund. So it's been there for quite some time, and that's what Germany believes should be used now to try and help countries that will be particularly hit by the coronavirus crisis. So for example, Italy or Spain. But those countries do not necessarily view that positively. They think there are too many strings attached to this mechanism, and they've been favoring something different called the corona bonds, which basically means that European countries as a group would issue bonds, would issue debt together. And that is something that in particular northern countries like the Netherlands or Germany view negatively, because they think that that could go out of their hands very quickly. So as you can see, there are very different views in Europe regarding what direction the continent should take, and we're talking about a very important direction. In fact, the German Chancellor saying that probably this is the biggest challenge that the European Union has faced.
But it doesn't mean that without this agreement, this unanimous agreement, that individual countries can go ahead with their own packages. Because, I mean, here in Africa, I have not seen or heard any ECOWAS or African Union response, so to speak. But individual countries have had their own plans. For example, here in Ghana right now, I just spoken to our parliamentary correspondent, because our finance minister has been to Parliament and presented a request for some money that's meant to cushion people individually. As the EU, as an entity, has not been able to agree, it doesn't stop individual countries from doing what they deem fit.
You're absolutely right there, Gifty, and in fact this is something that you often see in times of crisis, and it's absolutely natural for countries to first try and find answers for their own citizens. That's something that we've seen absolutely clear in this current crisis, and you see Germany or you see other European countries trying to pass different measures to help their own citizens first and foremost, and only then as a second step obviously try and meet with European leaders to try and find a common strategy at a wider level, at a European level. Germany, and we spoke about that I think a couple of weeks ago, also passed a very big aid package to try and help the companies that will be most affected by the coronavirus. It's a package that also includes help for smaller businesses, for people who are independent, who have, for example, very small businesses or who work as freelancers. It's a very, very big and ambitious package to try and prevent any big damage to Germany's economy, you know, because we've also spoken to this about this in this program a lot. Germany's economy is absolutely vital to Germany's interests around the world, and as such, when Germany looks at this coronavirus crisis, it obviously looks at it from a public health perspective. First and foremost, it's about saving lives, it's about making sure people are healthy, but at the same time obviously about reducing any potential political and economic impact.
Interesting. Do you have any idea what the economic outlook is for the other key countries within the EU that you can share with us?
The economic outlook, Gifty, is not good at all, and that's something that most countries already know, and that's why when you have a situation where most businesses have to close, where most businesses are affected by a big crisis, and where those businesses are affected not only in one country but around the world, the economic outlook for respective countries and for the European Union as a whole is something that does not look positive, and that's why the urgency is now to try and find common agreements and common solutions at a European level as well. Because yes, it is a problem that affects obviously individual countries. Yes, it is a public health situation, and we've spoken about that as well with all the different numbers of infected people in different European countries. But it is also about finding policies for when things get slowly back to normal, because the economic impact, the financial impact, will only probably be felt in a particular way then. And that's why, for example, another part of the debate here in Europe is when to ease those restrictions. Many of Germany's neighbors, like Denmark in the north or Austria in the south, the Czech Republic as well, have already issued concrete plans of when they plan to ease some of those restrictions and get step by step back to normal. In the German case, the Chancellor has said that she thinks it would be irresponsible of her part to give a concrete date, because she doesn't want to give a concrete date, then have to backtrack if the infection numbers are still up. So that's why the German Chancellor has said that restrictions will still continue to be in place over Easter and at least until the 19th of April.
And that's important because nobody really understands or seems to understand the trend that this particular virus is taking. Is still a thing that all of the world seem to be learning about and following the pace. Thomas, we'll wrap it up there, but just to find out, is there any latest on Chancellor Angela Merkel? Is there any latest on the restrictions on movement?
Angela Merkel is back to normal. You know that she was in a self-isolation, but she tested negative 3 times. So last week she announced she would be working from the Chancellery once again, and in fact she gave a press conference earlier this week to detail some of those measures, and it was precisely as part of those measures that she said that Germany is still not prepared to ease those restrictions, that obviously the German government is considering different options, but at the same time the restrictions that have been put in place will still be in place for a couple of weeks more, until the 19th of April, and it's only then that the government and authorities will try and look at what the statistics are saying. If the statistics are looking good, then restrictions will be eased. If not, then Germany will still be affected by those restrictions. But again, authorities have been saying that the most important thing is for people to stay healthy, to try and take precautions. It is not time for them to stop, and that is something that will be particularly important now in the next few days that we have the Easter holiday coming up.
Thomas, thank you. Thomas Sparrow there, he's political correspondent with our partners DW, who joining us from home in Germany, from where he's working, and of course he's giving us an idea of what's happening right now. Is that among the EU countries, they're trying to find a common goal, a common plan of recovery, especially for the economies, but there hasn't been an understanding on exactly where the funding should come from. That's what Thomas was explaining to us. Well, we'll tell you which other country is coming back to normal, but let's stop at the United States first, where the death toll from there is about 13,000. America's battle with the disease appears increasingly mired in politics. President Trump has accused the World Health Organization of misleading the world when the outbreak started in China. We'll hear from Trump shortly, but first take a look at this report by PBS NewsHour.
Milestone reached.
A lot of pain again today for many New Yorkers.
Deaths in New York City have now exceeded 3,200, more than died in the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center. But the number of new patients being ferried to hospitals is dropping, and Governor Andrew Cuomo says that is a sign of progress.
Right now, we're projecting that we are reaching a plateau in the total number of hospitalizations, and you can see the growth, and you see it starting to flatten.
Other states are also seeing early signs of containment. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy urges staying the course.
But we cannot be happy with only reaching a plateau. We need to keep strong and keep determined to see that curve begin to fall and ultimately get to zero. That's going to require many more weeks at the least of our being smart and staying at least at all times 6 feet apart.
But in Wisconsin today, staying 6 feet apart presented a new challenge for voters. The state Supreme Court ordered the primary to take place as scheduled after an 11th-hour legal battle to delay in-person voting. Lines outside polling stations stretched for blocks. National Guard troops stepped in to run sites where poll workers failed to show in fear of catching the virus. Meanwhile, the pandemic's effect on detained migrants came into sharper focus. Amnesty International reported that detention facilities have failed to adopt adequate measures to prevent outbreaks. The report says they're not ensuring basic hygiene and sanitation or enforcing social distancing practices and quarantining people with symptoms. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has reported 19 migrants have so far tested positive as authorities continue to detain individuals and families. Advocates have asked ICE to provide alternatives to detention. The agency announced today it may start doing so for certain detainees, including those over 60 and pregnant women. But the Trump administration's efforts to control the virus have been called into question even outside close quarters like these. The New York Times reported today that warnings about the scale of the crisis circulated around the White House in late January, even as President Trump publicly downplayed the threat. Memos from trade advisor Peter Navarro warned the virus could take millions of lives and cost the economy trillions. President Trump also came under fire today for replacing Glenn Fine, the independent watchdog who had been chosen by peers to oversee the rollout of more than $2 trillion in coronavirus relief funds.
That's a report by PBS NewsHour, where President Donald Trump has also been given an update on the situation. He has been talking about facilities being put in place to accommodate infected people. He spoke on the ventilators as that they had and the additional ones the United States is expecting for distribution to other countries.
Corps of Engineers is constructing facilities that will support more than 15,000 hospital beds to treat patients in need. So they're building now approximately 15,000. They just completed the big one in New York. They just completed and are in the process of continuing in Chicago and many other places. They're incredible. The Army Corps of Engineers, we owe them a lot. What they were able to do in such a short period of time. They'll build these massive facilities, 2,000 beds in 4 days. I want to remind governors and emergency managers that sharing real-time data with us about equipment and their needs is very important. All of their supplies, hospital occupancy is critical. A lot of the occupancy is really getting a little bit lower than anticipated, and that's good. We'll ensure that we can rapidly deploy federal assets where and when they're needed, especially on ventilators. We have 8,675 ventilators right now in stock, ready to move. And we have all sorts of incredible soldiers. Our military is going to move them should they be needed. In addition to the 8,675 ventilators, we have a total of 110,000 ventilators coming over a short period of time. I don't think we'll need them. Hopefully we won't need them. I don't think we'll need anywhere near them. But we'll have them for the future, and we'll also be able to help other countries who are desperate for ventilators. We now have 10 drugs in active trials, with 15 more soon to follow, as well as 2 vaccine candidates in active clinical trials. We'll do whatever it takes to secure needed medical supplies and bring more production of essential medicines back to our shores. We're doing that. We're bringing them back to our shores.
President Donald Trump there for you. Well, nearly 3 months after it was sealed off, Wuhan has opened its doors again. Highways and train lines have been opened to traffic. Its 11 million residents, I should say, are now able to leave without specific authorization. But they still need an app that tracks their health and movement. Once again, a report by CNA.
As the COVID-19 rages on across the world, the Chinese city of Wuhan, which was the epicenter of the viral outbreak, is emerging from strict quarantine. With the city no longer under lockdown to curb the spread of the virus, residents are regaining freedom of movement. The first train set off from Wuhan at 6:25 a.m., and it was one of over 270 passenger trains bound for destinations across China today. These include those to Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Chengdu. Authorities say disinfection work has been carried out in all stations and trains prior to service resumption. Trains also come with quarantine seats for emergencies. Train attendants, though, are taking no chances. They're wearing masks and goggles to work. Passengers, meanwhile, will need to present a health code via a cell phone app before they're allowed to enter the train station. They're also reminded to keep their face masks on for the entire duration of the train ride. Flights also resumed at Wuhan's international airport. Same safety measures apply to ensure passengers are healthy before they enter the terminal. And notices abound to remind people to comply to safe distancing. The over 10 weeks of tough restrictions came to an end at the stroke of midnight in a light show watched by thousands. Wuhan and the wider province of Hubei bore the brunt of the outbreak in China, accounting for most of the over 81,000 infections and over 3,300 deaths from the virus. But with rapidly falling cases, restrictions have been gradually eased, with an outbound travel ban now lifted. The Chinese government estimates that as many as 55,000 people will leave Wuhan, a city of 11 million today. The move, though, comes amid warnings by the World Health Organization, which urged governments not to hastily ease restrictions so as to prevent a recurrence of COVID-19 infections.
That's a report by CNA giving us an idea of what Wuhan looks like. Subsequently, we'll try and be, as the days go on, we'll try and be linking up with people there to find out what the situation is. But right now, I'll bring you back to Africa. We go to Sierra Leone, and that country is in a 72-hour lockdown after its 6th COVID-19 case was reported. Only six, I should say. Let's go on Skype now. We speak with Eric Kawa. He's with Africa News as a correspondent. He's also a radio host with Radio Sierra Leone. Hello, Eric.
Hi, Joy.
Eric, thank you for your time. Right, that's okay. Sierra Leone only has 6 cases. We know that Sierra Leone was one of the hardest hit countries when Ebola came up, and right now it is dealing with coronavirus, but you're just at number 6, but then you are on a 72-hour lockdown.
All right, Gifty, now this morning it starts to say that the country recorded another new case, which is giving now a total of 7 cases, and lockdown ended yesterday. Okay. So that is the situation so far. So
what is it that Sierra Leone is doing about movement of people in and out of the country? Here in Ghana, one of the biggest problems have been people who were traveling in because the very first case was imported. What is Sierra Leone's story? Are people still coming in and out? How is it able to keep the virus at bay? Because only 6 cases have been recorded there so far.
All right, so that has been one of the very huge concerns, because many of the cases that were reported in many African countries are imported cases from the diaspora, and even the one here is also one that traveled from the diaspora who came into the country on the 16th of March. Then they reported a case on the 31st of March. But the government, a few days later, after the 16th, around the 20-something, had to declare put a ban and restriction on all international flights that were coming in the country, except for international situations. And also, the country also locked its borders with regards to neighboring Guinea and Liberia as well. So that is one of the key things that they're doing, and more concerns are also about looking at the about the riverine areas, because we also got complaints over the lockdown that people had to move from a boat who came from neighboring Guinea. So there are also concerns about more measures being put in place and putting a restriction on those other areas as well.
Interesting. Sorry, so Sierra Leone ban puts restrictions on its borders, especially with the African countries around. So that would say, someone would say that was a stitch in time, and which is why perhaps the country has only 6 cases. But with the 72-hour lockdown, what reasons did the government give for imposing that sort of lockdown when there were only 6? And I'm using Ghana as an example because we did not go in a lockdown when we had 6. So there are only 6, but they went into a lockdown, but now that lockdown is over. It was just 72 hours. What sort of reasons did the government give for that action?
Okay, first of all, it is significant to note that the president declared a state of emergency for 1 year. That is way before even the country declared a single case of the coronavirus. And then certain restrictions were also placed to be sure that they help in the fight against the COVID-19. Though the action was met with so many debates and so many reactions, because the 1 year state of emergency was said to be quite a huge time, especially considering the fact that the country is there. With the location under Section 29 says that the president could declare a state of emergency in and of that.
Eric, I'm losing you. I'm losing you intermittently. But if I hear you, what you're saying, you said that the government earlier declared a state of emergency, and that state of emergency declared it for the whole year.
Yes, exactly, for a whole year before the country had to, in fact, record a single case. So as it is happening now, the lockdown was also announced, that 72 hours of lockdown. That happened immediately when the country recorded other new cases. And during the lockdown, on the very first day of the lockdown, the country recorded another case, which gave a total of 6. And the lockdown ended yesterday. And today, the Ministry of Information also made an announcement that there's also a new case, which has given a total of 7.
So as we speak, the total recorded case in Sierra Leone is 7.
Yes, 7 cases recorded so far.
Which other intervention or which other action is the government taking? And when they declare 1 year of state of emergency, exactly what are the actions expected to follow?
Okay, so that has to do with the ban of religious gatherings, which is one, and also the restriction of social gatherings. And there's also been a curfew that was imposed in one of the northern districts, which is Cambia, that shares border to neighboring Guinea, and that curfew also has to do with from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was also declared in that aspect. And then many individuals said to move the security force again to level 2, which means citizens should also be very careful, especially with security issues. And so citizens were worried about the rights and other issues, because even during the lockdown, we saw some skirmishes between the security forces and citizens who flout the law or who went on the street. But I interviewed the deputy head of media at the Sierra Leone Police, who is Samuel Sayo Conte. He spoke with me yesterday, and he told me that they actually condemned the action of the security forces who were seen beating a man supposedly said to be a man who is not mentally okay. So he said they debunked that action, but also called on all citizens to make sure that they follow the certain rules, because in a state of emergency, of course, the rights of the people will not be observed as it used to be.
That's a very detailed report there for us. Thank you so much, Eric. Eric Kawa is a correspondent for African News. He's a radio host with Radio Sierra Leone, giving us that breakdown there. So in Sierra Leone, they've recorded only six cases, but what they've done is that the country is in a state of emergency. The president there has announced a state of emergency, and they're observing the routines in any state of emergency. So there is a curfew. There are restrictions on mass gatherings as well. And just yesterday, they finished a 72-hour lockdown. And this is a country that has just recorded its case number 6. It looks like Sierra Leone has taken a lot of cues from Ebola. Well, 7, I should say, 7. It's taken a lot of cues from Ebola, it looks like, for Sierra Leone, because it was really hit by that outbreak as well. So we've just come back from Sierra Leone. We're going to take a very quick break. When I return, we go on to the front line. Do stay with us. Well, we did announce to do the front line, and we were just about to do it, but we have to go quickly to Parliament, where the minority is holding a press conference on the back of the coronavirus deal that the finance minister is proposing. Let's go right now to Parliament, where the press conference has started.
And for your purposes and for my purpose, Order 6 is on, and I quote, where no provision is provided for in the standing orders. But as the Honorable Collins Dowda rightly and the whip responded to him, when it comes to the end of a meeting, and for those of you who want to appreciate, sittings make up a meeting and meetings make up a session under Article 112 of the 1992 Constitution. And therefore, to say that the Speaker is exercising powers because no provision have been made for is neither here nor there, because our standing orders in Order 42, if you want me to elucidate further, I may be compelled to read it full. Mr. Speaker may at any time suspend a sitting of the House. Mr. Speaker shall be responsible after consultation with the House, for fixing the time when a sitting of the House should be adjourned sine die, or to a particular day, or to an hour, or part of the same day. So when you adjourn or suspend and we don't know when we are coming, then you have provided more confusion in the minds of members of Parliament. So when you say further in the exercise of the powers conferred on the Speaker by Order 6 of the Standing Orders of the Parliament of Ghana, the Right Honourable Speaker subsequently directed that Parliament resume sitting. He didn't direct when we resumed sitting. At the time we suspended, nobody knew when we are back. That is the wrong we are pointing out to. And let's be careful. There can be what you call benevolent dictators in multi-party constitutional democracy. Can you imagine tomorrow a certain president or a certain speaker just walks to the chamber and walks to his seat and bow his head down and say, I've suspended Parliament, and walks away? That is a precedent that is being set. And that is the threat and the danger we are walking you through. We would have thought that he would have come under Order 75, not 72. We are primarily also concerned that in these matters, Parliament doesn't only exercise an oversight function, an oversight role in terms of ministries, departments, and agencies. Members of Parliament are also representatives of the people, and therefore we exercise a representative function. Pursuant to that, we've been requesting the Minister for Health to come and give Parliament an update. It is not for government not even to allow technical people from Noguchi and from the Kumasi Institute of Research to be making the determination. COVID is not necessarily a political matter, and it's not a matter for political showmanship, as we are witnessing, or matters for political campaigning when they pretend and say that we should be national and we should coalesce together. Let it be demonstrated that they are respecting the letter and spirit of the Constitution. Now, before I take you through some of the issues, you saw the Minister of Finance came to Parliament today, again with a statement. Which statement they hurriedly again said they are relying on Article 1771 of the 1992 Constitution. And with your indulgence, I like to quote it before I make my elucidation on it. 1771. You see, when you apply the law conveniently to suit your purposes, you have a problem. We are demanding absolute transparency from the President and his COVID technical team to respond to this issue. Today, the Minister of Finance, after a statement in Parliament, I have a copy here for you. You got copies. Save the appendix that is attached. What he sought to do was to rehash his words on 30th March to Parliament and to say that that has been laid in Parliament. Do we lay statements in Parliament? If you want to vary expenditure pursuant to the Public Financial Management Act and by the procedures of Parliament, you come by motion. Now, if you say we granted you stabilization fund and the media raised these critical questions for us, Nana Addo Dankwa and Ken Ofori-Atta, where is their buffer program? Because stabilization fund created under the NDC, the PRMA Act 815, we invested that $319 million US. So what have they added onto it as a government? And the interest which have accrued to the $319 million, because it just can't be there. And the name as it applies, stabilization fund, you've seen them beat a retreat on heritage fund because it's a no-go area for them. And that fund, the two funds were created for a purpose. One, when you have distortions as we have, you can rely on the stabilization fund. So stabilization fund, there's 300 million. We are capping only 219 million. That gives you cumulatively some 1 billion. Now, by their own estimate that they presented on 30th March, they required 562 million for their COVID eradication program. Now, if you look at what the Minister of Finance have done today, I'll come and I'll respond to the President's addresses to the nation. You have food packages and hot meals, 40 million. Support to households, 280 million Ghana cedis. Which households and to which family? How was it determined? A need or a means test? We need to know. And we are demanding that COVID be handled above partisanship. And it truly must be nationalistic in all its forms and character as we collectively endeavor to prevent it, to contain it, and to manage it. Our numbers are not as alarming as we've read from other jurisdictions, whether it's Italy or Spain, even the UK. Sometimes Ghana creates an impression as if our situation is worse than what is happening in Italy or Spain or even in the United Kingdom. That is not the issue, in order that they have justification for some of those issues. Now, when you say provision of water and sanitation, 200 million, we are told that we are not to pay water bills. So what is that provision meant for? Is government going to cushion with that money of 200 million? Is it going to garner water for purposes that citizens will not pay? If you see the appendix breakdown of Ken Ofori-Atta to Parliament today, it has provision for water and sanitation. We are demanding answers. How much is for water and how much is for sanitation? And an elaborate breakdown of the 100 million plus the 100 million giving us the 200 million. Now we see relief for health workers, which is an improvement better than frontline workers. If we're going to talk of just frontline workers, nurses and doctors who are likely to come into contact or who would be in contact are potential frontline workers. And therefore, if you have a package for them, it must be expansive enough to deal with that particular issue. Now, waiver of personal income taxes for all health workers for 3 months. Even as the minister spoke today, I'm struggling to find a paragraph in his statement. By virtue of Article 174 of the 1992 Constitution, the power to waive taxes is vested in Parliament, not the executive and not the president. And therefore, if he wants a review of the income taxes, that must have been a necessary part of today's proceedings submitted to us since Sunday. I find that conspicuously lost in the Minister of Finance submission to Parliament, and we are demanding better particulars of it. Waiver of personal income taxes, and to remind the President that the power to waive taxes is not vested in him as President. You see, we are just cautioning that during this period of impositions and restrictions, we are not saying that the President should not act and act in a manner to contain it, but he must respect due process and respect our institutions. You also find allowance for 50% of basic salary for all frontline health workers for 4 months. That I won't comment so much. It's not everything there which is not right. But you have Basin Ayalulu buses. So at least after all, President Mahama and the NDC got it right. The abandoned Ayalulu of the NDC and President Mahama have become useful to support Ghana's collective effort to find it. Where attribution is necessary, they should be able to do that. Now, 3, soft loans for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. We know this, Minister, sometimes disbursement of public resources in Ghana, they are distributed as if they are MPP party resources. We have to remind this government that there is a delicate and an important distinction between party resources and state resources, and that every Ghanaian is entitled to the benefits of this 600 million. Now, is it 600 or 1 billion? In one breath, the communication is 1 billion. In another breath, there is 600 million. That also provides for some confusion. But what we are demanding is to know the beneficiaries. What kind of businesses are they engaged in? For instance, of the 600 million, it would have been very useful if we could just make a determination that the hospitality industry is hard hit by it. The hotels and staff, supporting staff are all at home. How much of it is going to whom and for what? We need to have an understanding and an appreciation for it. Now, President Nana Addo Dankwa has been responsive to the Ghanaian people with his briefs on the state of Ghana and the state of COVID in Ghana. But you see that the level of consultation have to be deepened, particularly with the stakeholders. I'm not sure that the Ghana Registered Nurses Association was consulted before this announcement on health line workers or frontline workers, neither the Ghana Medical Association, as you can witness it. Now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, the president was emphatic on water for 4 months. For 3 months, maybe he'll be generous enough. For 3 months, no payment of water bills. But all of a sudden, Ghana Water was attempting to say that if you owe them, you would not benefit. Also a manifestation that proper and conclusive consultation was not done. Then more importantly, electricity bills and electricity consumption, naturally, because we are home, will go up. It is comparatively more expensive than water, as I understand it, and over 3 million customers for that. And you know, in respect of electricity, when your credit is gone, it's gone. It's automatic disconnection. So we demand clarity from the president. In this instance that you are not working and you are home, you cannot even load your credit. So if he is granting that relief for electricity, let him say so. We are demanding that he does that for electricity. We are demanding that, because as your units pass out, you are automatically in some darkness of a sort or light out. You are not working, you are not earning, you cannot earn. It is not to tell ECG that they shouldn't disconnect you when automatically you are offline. So once we demand a clarity, it is our considered view that he should extend water to electricity and demand for clarity in respect of that. Even in terms of data, those of you who are home, to manage the social and economic impact of it, everybody, and how you manage your stress and anxiety, it's important that data charges, as we witness across the globe, is subsidized or lowered in order that we can communicate well and deal with this emergency. We are not seeing that, even though that was hinted in one of the earlier statements of the Minister for Finance. Petroleum prices, we expect that there would be a downwards trend, as was well articulated by Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And we demand that there is clarity in respect of the frontline staff. Who is it and who gets what? The security agencies are not too happy with the 100 Ghana cedis allowance. Some of them have reported to us as a minority that the food, in some instances, they've been told that someone will cook for them. How did that cooking happen? Is their command structures in charge? Are they responsible, or are they outsourcing it? Is it with their tacit approval in order that they get that? So we demand a national COVID action plan of the president, which should be an elaboration of the COVID allegation program. And we expect that there will be some expenditure cuts, even from the Flagstaff office. The number of staff must reduce, not increase, as our colleague indicated last time on the floor of Parliament. So we demand that COVID-19, the elevation program, be non-partisan. All across the country, you don't give contracts to party apparatchiks and then pretend and say that it's non-partisan. Who is distributing what and where? We demand to know. We are not too impressed. The first stage of this is about testing, monitoring, and you know what's happening even in South Africa to South Korea. If there is zero testing, there will be zero results in terms of numbers. So inadequate testing, you are likely to pretend that all is well when all is not well. So we need to up the testing and monitoring and tracing regime in order to contain the infectiousness of this particular novel coronavirus. Now, PPEs, even though it's a challenge globally, it's only fair and appropriate that we demand how much of what PPEs have been acquired by the state, apart from those that was generously donated by the Chinese businessman. We need to know how much Jack Ma, we need to know personal protection equipment, what have been bought and what have been used where. And we also demand that testing centers, is it just Accra, Kumasi, and the 2 research centers that have been named, or we are prepared countrywide from Wa through Bolga, Navrungu, through Wale to Tamale, Salaga to Pandai. If it does break out, we can be sure that some testing can be done and some containment can be done. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, during periods of this nature, there are infractions on fundamental freedoms and human rights. We recognize that the President has issued an EI, an executive instrument. But interestingly, one of the instruments is already on communication. Is it the case that they were waiting for this pandemic to issue and add on to that to have access to people's mobile data? Warning signals. The telcos are not particularly happy about it, and we demand what is the motivation for that demand in the request. Now, there are infractions on human rights, and we demand that privacy of communication is still respected. The Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ, must take particular interest in monitoring across the country all human rights infractions and fundamental freedoms and provide a report for our scrutiny and study as Ghanaians. It does not mean that when there are those impositions and restrictions, we lose those rights. Our rights to dignity and honor must still be respected. In my own Tamale, the mayor is in some excessive excitement, even went to a graveside and drove the family away, even when the numbers were probably less than the officially announced 25. And then when you are husband and wife and you are riding a motorbike in your poverty, he can beat one of you because you must do social distancing. So one of the spouses may suffer because of it. We are saying that minimum force is defined by the courts of Ghana, and therefore any excessive use of force by the security agencies under this moment should not be accepted and tolerated. They can, with politely, I should commend some of them, even driving through the House to Parliament. They will look through and ask you where you are going. But those of them that have registered some impunity in terms of the violations and others. Mr. Eric Ofochu and Ashaman, our honorable member for the area, is monitoring and following the story very closely. There was an initial attempt at cover-up. Our condolences and sympathy. Any innocent life lost becomes a matter that we should deal with. You saw also the president, on a Sunday, he had hurriedly constituted a national trust fund for COVID-19. Then subsequently came to Parliament with a bill. Then Parliament was dancing to fit his purpose on Sunday in order that when he was inaugurating it, didn't he know that there was no law, that he needed to come by law. So we are still reminding him of due process. You don't go and inaugurate a 7-member committee, then hardly come to Parliament, then Parliament in our rubber stamp status will go and say the governing board is the same number of women. We must be careful of retroactivity, which is not tolerated within the framework of the 1992 Constitution, but undoubtedly a laudable initiative to mobilize public-private resources to support government effort. So by this press conference, we are demanding better particulars from government. If you want to spend 1 billion, in another breath you reduce it to 600 million. Now, as I indicated, there are 1.2 billion, and they've run to your committee on finance, and I'll come back to the numbers again, but just to let you know, those of you who have studied little constitutional law as I have done, they come under Article 177. I saw it in the Finance Committee report, which reads, and I quote, "There shall be paid into the contingency fund monies voted for the purpose by Parliament, and advances may be made from the fund which are authorized by the committee responsible for financial measures in Parliament." So they got it right there. Whenever the committee is satisfied that there has arisen an urgent or unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists to meet that need. That's 1771. But read the two. Very instructive. And we are avoiding it. Where an advance is made from the contingency fund, a supplementary estimate shall be presented as soon as possible to Parliament. Where is that supplementary estimate? And even if you read 1772 very well, it says for the purpose of replacing the amount so advanced. So it means spending from the stabilization fund is only an impress. By Article 1772 of the Constitution, he's only been granted an impress. He must come back how he intends to recover. So they shouldn't be reading 171 in isolation. 1771 in isolation, leaving out the two. I know the minority have members on the finance committee. I see the ranking member, and I'm reminding the ranking member and his colleagues on the finance committee that the finance committee of parliament does not exist in isolation. And I refer you to Article 103 of the 1992 Constitution, and it quotes, Parliament shall appoint standing committees and other committees as may be necessary for the effective discharge of its functions. So be reminded that whether Finance Committee, Environment Committee, Mines and Energy Committee is to assist Parliament in the discharge of our duties. So the Minister for Finance, when he comes and conveniently just read a statement and then lay it, we need 1.2 billion. Is that the same thing as the Banwea exchange rate, 5.8 to Ghana cedis to a dollar? Does it give you 1.2? So any money beyond the stabilization fund, the Minister of Finance necessarily must come back to Parliament for us to give him the authority to spend. It's only out of the stabilization fund the Finance Committee of Parliament can guide him. I saw in Section 23 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, but even that, he has two options. If they were consulting, we would have shown him an easier option, because in this matter, he may not be able to pay the 290 million back immediately because it's COVID and unforeseen exigency to deal with. If they had come to the NDC, we could be wiser to offer them some advice so that they didn't need to walk through all the process of 171 and 2. If they had men, they could have, consistent with the PRMA, borrowed and dealt with the emergency, because the PRMA allows you either to send the money to the contingency fund or to service a loan. We demand a national COVID-19 plan which should be adequately costed to guide our national response preparedness and social mitigation strategy. And we pray what is happening elsewhere does not get to us in Ghana. That one, we join the president or all well-meaning Ghanaians in their prayers. But we want to know what government intends to do. You see, a political party is raising more money, even more than a trust fund, or spending about the same thing as to what a trust fund is doing. It's significant for our purposes. So I'm sure I'm done with generally the essence of this press briefing. You have seen the, I'll yield over to the whip, and then the ranking member of finance will come, and probably he will do his fancy tree version of the presentation as I have tried to do. Deputy Leader, I recommend you joining the Finance Committee. Thanks for your presence here together with the leadership and members of the Finance Committee. So, ladies and gentlemen of the press, we want Ghana to be governed, even with COVID, with due process and respect to the rule of law and the institutions of Ghana. We cannot run this country at the whims of any individual statesmanship. I thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Leader. Colleagues, from the media, colleagues, members of Parliament, our colleagues from the Finance Committee just came back. So before we take questions, we'll take some updates from the Deputy Leader who sat through the Finance Committee meeting. Then the ranking, I thought he was going to do three. No, he will do. Okay, so Honorable Atu Forsen will take us through the updates from the meeting. I know a number of things have been said by the leader, but he will give a more detail, some of the push and pull that happened in the committee. And maybe probably try to summarize it to in three, then we'll let you ask the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader. The Finance Committee just left. We concluded the meeting. before us was a presentation by Ken Oforiatta, our Minister for Finance, and he's asking us to consider and give him the authorization to spend 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. We have a number of concerns with that one. Our first concern relates to the fact that all the items that they made requests for, they did not provide us with breakdown costing. For instance, they said that they want 40 million Ghana cedis for food, package, and hot meals, without giving us the number of people, 40 million Ghana cedis, without giving us the details as to how much a pack of food is going to cost, the unit cost. Again, they said they are giving 40 million and 3 million to Ghana, 40.3 million Ghana cedis to Ghana National Buffer Stocks Company, also to buy food and distribute, without giving us the details of what they are actually going to buy from the Ghana Buffer Stocks Company. Again, they have projected that they are going to spend 200 million Ghana cedis as water bills for across the country. We needed to know the breakdown of costs, how much of this is going to Ghana Water, how much is going to community water, and how much of this is going to go to the tanker drivers. Because there are homes that they don't have water, and tanker drivers are those who are going to take the water and send to them, so including hospitals. So we needed information on that. Most importantly, they said that they are requesting Parliament of Ghana to allow them to take money from the contingency fund to take care of the taxes that the president said they are going to waive for the health workers. Our argument is simple. 241.42 million Ghana cedis. Our argument is that we are ready as a minority to grant tax waiver under Article 174 of our Constitution, so that we will not take money from government coffers for the health workers. So government, minorities in a position to allow them to get a tax exemption for the period. And we are proposing that this 241.42 million should be used for the purposes of subsidizing electricity bills for residential customers in the lockdown areas. So we have made that position firmly, and we hope that they will accept it. In fact, we were told at the committee that that is not their immediate priority. Okay? That is not the government's position at this time. But we are insisting that until we approve this 1.2 billion, this 241.42 million should be used for the purposes of subsidy for the residential customers in the locked-up areas, particularly in Accra and Kumasi areas that we are talking about. Then again, they are saying that they are going to use 80 million Ghana cedis as allowances for 50% of the basic salary for all frontline health workers for 4 months. Now, we agree to that. But what we are saying is we want a definition of who constitutes frontline health workers. The president informed us that they are now in consultation to find out a definition. So they don't know. They don't know. But you heard the minority leader saying that we want this money to be extended to all healthcare workers. And our flag bearer has made that point. So that's our position. And then again, they are saying for 2 weeks, Ayololo buses that will be used for health workers in Accra, Tamakumase, and Kaswa areas, they are going to spend 2 million Ghana cedis as fuel. 2 million Ghana cedis as fuel. Again, we want to know the costings. And then what surprises us most is that, let me clarify something. We had another expose at the committee meeting. We were told that the tax waiver will only be given to government workers, health workers. So if you are a private health worker, you are not covered under that. And so we insist that that should cover all health workers, not only government health workers. Because they also play a role. They also play a role. And then we are saying that the minister informed us that an amount of 600 million Ghana cedis will be used as soft loans for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. Again, they failed to give us the terms of the loan,
terms of recovery, and who qualifies to get that loan. Our position is simple. In as much as we support that all of this money must be spent, we also have a responsibility to make sure that individuals do not benefit unduly from this. Because we are aware that in times of emergency, people take advantage of emergency and enrich their pocket. We in the minority is saying that we hold the government accountable to the use of public funds. Again, we don't want this use to be politicized. In as much as we have approved that 40 million Ghana cedis should be used for hot meals, we don't want to see party chairmen, parliamentary candidates leading the charge to distribute food. Because indeed, it is your money. It is my money. It's the money that belongs to all of us. It is not money that belongs to MPP. It is the money for all of us. And in any case, these are monies that we accumulated in the stabilization fund by the previous administration. And so we will not accept political parties to lead a charge to distribute food. This should be done by Ghanaians other than political parties. And that's why we are saying that we recommend that a bipartisan committee be established to oversee how this expenditure is managed and how this has been done. And then report to Parliament regularly. As and when there is a requirement for them to come to Parliament, we ask them that they should report to Parliament. So this is our position from the Finance Committee. We hope that as a matter of urgency, they will bring the supplementary estimate before Parliament so that we can look at the detail. But as we speak, they have just given us composite numbers, headline numbers without any estimation, as if no work has been done and somebody sat somewhere and gave us some sort of 40 million, 30 million, and then 600 million without any proper estimation. Unfortunately.
Thank you very much. So no composite numbers. They should provide better particulars to the proposed expenditure and a detailed breakdown. I'll yield the floor subsequently for him to do the tree component. But just in concluding on my part, the private sector of Ghana will be hardest hit by COVID-19 in the coming months. What the private sector of Ghana is asking for is not dole out of handouts of cash. They have asked for tax incentives and tax reliefs. Government must heed to them and engage the Association of Ghana Industry, GUTA and others much more extensively. Because when it is money, we will not know who will benefit from it. They are saying that deferred tax payment, for instance, even if you say that the private sector should have their taxes deferred for 3, 4, half a year, that will be more beneficial and direct to them. They're saying that you are looking for them with 600 million Ghana cedis to loan to distribute to them. That is significant. If you look at his memo he brought to Parliament he concludes by saying that he will provide brief to Cabinet from time to time. It's only fair he asks Parliament, even though I naturally could assume it. But it's important that as representatives of the people, we know what expenditure he is doing when. So I should thank the members and leaders of the Finance Committee. I'll take 1 or 2 questions, then yield the floor to Honorable Atu Forson, who will respect social distancing. Then he will address the 3 components of this press briefing. Yes, I'll take the next 2, 3 questions.
Leader,
your name and then you go ahead.
Leader, thank you very much. My name is Prince Alpha. I report for Pink FM. My direct question go to Honorable Atu Forson. Honorable, with all this proposal that was made from the minority side to the finance, how was the response from the finance minister and the chairman of the finance committee? Because looking at all this amount that you are quoting, going to organize this lunch without breaking it down, a day will be maybe 10 cedis per pack or 12 cedis per pack. And looking at what you are telling us,
and to how many people they are feeding,
and to how many people that you are going to feed them.
Add it.
So how
and areas as well. lockdown or unlockdown areas. The poverty is everywhere, both in lock and unlocked areas. Precisely.
Thank you.
Next question. Honorable, to take note.
My name is Kweku Sechidanso. I report for GhanaMPs.com.
Sechidanso, go ahead.
I believe we are not in normal times, and the standing orders, as you indicated, are being flouted. With the work being done at the Finance Committee, are we likely to see the work being brought to the floor of the House to be discussed, or they will take the decision and that's it?
I would attempt to answer that one. I heard the speaker say he referred to the Finance Committee to report, but he is reminded that Article 1771, you can't read it in isolation without two, and you can't read it in isolation from the Public Financial Management Act, and you cannot read it in isolation from Article 103 of the Constitution and the powers vested in Parliament under Article 93. Next question.
It's actually just a follow-up to that. At the Finance Committee meeting, before the meeting started, the majority leader, HMS Abunsu, relayed to committee members that what they are doing there would virtually constitute an approval or otherwise of the expenditure of the 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. And he was emphatic that if any communication from the committee has to go to Parliament itself, plenary, it would be by way of information and not approval. Essentially making the point that the Finance Committee, per the provisions in the Constitution, as far as his understanding is concerned, can give the necessary approval to the Finance Minister. And then buttressing the point that that's probably how come the Speaker just suspended Parliament indefinitely. Is that your understanding that the Finance Committee can give that approval, or it has to come back to the plenary?
It's the same understanding, warped understanding. It goes to Code Order 6. Order 6 says that where no provision is made, the Speaker can come in. I wish that I could take you through memory lane, but that would spoil the beauty of this discussion. When Professor Mills in the NDC died, the NDC constitution didn't contemplate death of candidate. So its constitution and its regulation did not make provision for it. In that instance, the neck of the party could exercise a residual power. In this matter, Order 46 is tried knowledge. How do you adjourn a meeting? Today you are struggling to redefine sitting. Sitting is defined in the standing orders of Parliament. It's not to be defined by him or the Speaker. The standing orders define sitting. Sittings make up a meeting, and a meeting make up a session. I don't want to go far. Even the use of the word, granted that I use prorogue, they didn't like it. Prorogue in English means discontinue. Hasn't he discontinued Parliament?
So,
apart from responding, take full force with the G version.
And in addition to that, just for clarity, so has the Finance Committee approved this request or further deliberation? Okay, thank you.
The ranking member will answer you, but colleague, also do well to help the Ghanaian people. 1771. The article is broken into two, 1771 and 1772. Have they done the two? When will they do the two? That means that in doing the two, they will come back to Parliament. You want me to repeat it again? You know, it is their understanding that the Finance Committee, read Article 103.
Haina Idrisu is minority leader there, speaking after Mr. Forson also spoke, who was at the meeting by the Finance Committee, reporting on what they were told at that meeting. Talks about the national buffer stock and the fact that no details were given as to what food, what was to be bought by the national buffer stock, for which money was being allocated. Talks about 200 million cedis that government wants to spend on water for everybody, as government has said that will enjoy water for 3 months for free. Talks about 80 million allowance that had been set aside for 4 months for frontline workers. Clarity, he says, was needed there as well. And then he talks about some 2 million cedis that was supposed to be spent on fuel. He said details were not given as to exactly how all these amounts were to be spent. They're seeking more clarification from the finance minister. We'll bring you more of that in our subsequent bulletins. Right now, let's do business live, and Daryl Powell is standing by. There's more news at myjoyonline.com if you do log on. And our YouTube link is at the bottom of this page. It has all of our stories. You can follow us from there. It's always a pleasure coming your way. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. Many thanks for staying with us.